Good morning, everybody. Delighted to be here. First and foremost, my grateful thanks to the organizers for affording me the opportunity to be present here today. And here they are. Many congratulations to you for the 20th edition of the conference. My greetings as well to this wonderful audience. And I think what makes today special is that the event is being held, as always, at Harvard Kennedy School. So I can't think of a finer institution, and it does not get any better, as they say. Now, I've been given 15 minutes to speak to the allotted topic, India at 2047, 100 years of independence. So time being short and the subject being vast, I shall structure my remarks across 9 pillars, from the state of the economy in India to business reforms, innovation, sustainability, inclusivity, and of course, to foreign policy, which is my turf. I am a career diplomat, as I was introduced. So let's start with the Indian economy first and foremost. 5th largest, in fact, the fastest growing large economy in the world today, with a great growth rate of 8.7% in 2021-22. A 500 times rise in total exports, with the highest ever exports of US dollars 660 billion in 2021-22. The annual FDI has doubled in the last 8 years since the launch of our Make in India program in 2014, from US dollars 35 billion to US dollars 84 billion. And yes, by the way, during the pandemic, India witnessed a V-shaped recovery. GDP contracted 24% in the first quarter of 21-22 before bouncing back to 20% in the fourth quarter. So you might ask me, what is the roadmap to India at 2047? Well, let me tell you, we aim to be the second largest economy at US dollars 32 trillion by 2047. With per capita income to grow 10 times to US dollars 20,000, FDI to grow 12 times to US dollars 1 trillion, and exports as well to grow 12 times to US dollars 8 trillion. Now, one interesting fact, the human capital of our country would still be the largest and youngest. Even today, it is less than 29. But in 2047, it would be the largest and youngest with a median age of just 29. So India is and will be in the foreseeable near future a very young country. Now, let's take a quick look at business. In terms of ease of doing business, many of you who are Indians know very well that there has been a 79 positions jump. A 79 positions jump in rank over just 5 years in the World Bank's EODB rankings. India has also featured in the top 3 improvers list consecutively for 3 years and is among the top 5 economies for ease of starting new business. There is a new corporate tax code. The tax is among the lowest globally today. There are a bunch of production-linked incentives to promote domestic production across 14 sectors. And I must also very quickly tell you about the Semicon India mission, under which financial incentives worth US dollars 10 billion have been provided to develop the semiconductors and display manufacturing ecosystem. There is also a national master plan for multimodal connectivity, a national logistics policy to reduce logistics costs to GDP, and an open network for digital commerce, the first of its kind open platform opportunity to expand via e-commerce by connecting with other solution partners. I will also very quickly add that the e-rupee has just been launched in India. Now let's turn to infrastructure. Massive. There's been an intense push on infrastructure in India across roads, railways, airports, and ports. Very quickly, as far as railways go, many of you know that we are the #1 rail network in Asia, with 8 billion plus passengers to grow to 20 billion plus in 2047. There is a 7 times projected growth for urban railways, a 4 times projected growth in port handling capacity, and a 7 times increase in aviation trips by 2047. Of course, I'm sure many of you would have heard that industrial smart cities are being master planned in India to international standards. You might ask me, what are the features of the smart cities? Very quickly, plug-and-play infrastructure, effluent treatment plants, single window clearance, potable and recycled water, multimodal connectivity, quality living, etc., etc. Now, turning to technology, what is happening here? We are currently 1.4 billion people with a unique digital identity. By the way, I just want to highlight to you that by the end of this year, that is by 2023, India officially would have surpassed China as the world's most populous country. Turning to digital, let me just tell you very quickly that we are number 2 amongst mobile phone users. Almost 750 Indians have smartphones today. And at the same time, we are among the lowest globally in terms of data cost, where there's been a 30 times reduction in cost. We will be a US dollars 1 trillion digital economy by financial year 2025, which is really round the corner. And an interesting fact for many of you, the 2 billion plus COVID vaccination coverage in India was enabled via an app, the COVID app, which was manufactured in India. Now, moving to startups, many of you would know that India has the world's 3rd largest startup ecosystem in the world. We contribute 1 out of 10 unicorns. Currently, we have 107 with a total valuation of US dollars 341 billion. 80 startups are recognized in India per day, which is the highest globally. 44 unicorns were added in 2021 and 21 were born in 2022, which just goes to show that the pandemic did not diminish the entrepreneurial spirit, which is very typically Indian. As far as innovation goes, India currently ranks number 1. Number 1 in the Global Innovation Index in the Central and Southern Asian region, having jumped 41 positions. And let me just rush you through with the names of companies who have one of their largest R&D centers in India: Samsung, Oracle, Qualcomm, SAP, LG, Cisco, General Electric, and Intel. There are 180 innovation centers in India which belong to Fortune 500 companies. Now, let me turn to sustainability, of which we speak enough at the United Nations. I'm sure you'll agree. What are India's achievements and vision here? Well, we are the 4th largest producer of renewable energy and solar power. We are at number 8, I say, in the Climate Change Performance Index 2023. India is at best among the G20 countries. Meantime, the International Solar Alliance, which was co-founded by India in 2015 in Paris, is expected to unlock US dollars 1 trillion investment in solar power by 2030 in India. Many of you would also recall that the world's very first solar-powered airport is located in India, in Cochin, which incidentally is one of the most beautiful places in my country. Now, let me also very quickly remind you of India's 5 energy commitments, which were communicated by the Indian Prime Minister in 2021 in Glasgow. 1, we will raise non-fossil fuels-based energy capacity to 500 gigawatts by 2030, meet 50% of the country's energy requirements using renewables by 2030, net zero by 2070. But this is not enough. Climate action, importantly, is proposed to be complemented by a sustainable lifestyle. And this is where the Indian Prime Minister's Mission Life comes in. Now, what is Mission Life? Life is an acronym for Lifestyle for the Environment. Incidentally, I was privileged enough to be present for the launch of Mission Life in Gujarat in October 2022 in the presence of the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres. Mission Life envisions replacing the present use and dispose economy with a circular economy, defined by mindful and deliberate utilization, as our Prime Minister says, as opposed to mindless consumption. Moving on to inclusivity, which chimes with the call to action by the United Nations of leaving no one behind in the effort to dignify all. When we talk about inclusivity, let's first and foremost talk about women. Well, in India, we have an excellent model. We are not talking of women's empowerment. We are talking about women-led development and growth. All of you would know that the Indian Prime Minister, the Honorable President of India, is a woman. There has also been a 55% growth, which is quite remarkable, I would say, in women CEOs and MDs in the corporate sector in the last 5 years. By the way, India also has the highest number of women commercial pilots. And in my own service, the number of lady diplomats has grown exponentially. We have many, many lady ambassadors manning Indian missions and posts abroad. Again, continuing on inclusivity, I thought there is something very interesting. We are the only country in the world which prints every currency note in Braille. 478 million plus bank accounts have been opened. 30 million houses have been built for the economically weaker sections, and 3.2 million people have received free treatment under a central government scheme. And when we talk about inclusivity, let's also talk about integrative and holistic healthcare. And over $9 billion outlay is there for strengthening the healthcare infrastructure, coverage of secondary and tertiary education procedures of $6,070 per annum per family for 500 million beneficiaries. Please remember that when you talk of India, you must recognize the scale at which things happen in India and the speed at which they are happening right now. International Day of Yoga, UN recognized, celebrates restorative healing and inner peace. This is India's gift to the world. And let me also say that health reminds me of India's strategic response against COVID-19. Might I remind all of you here that we led the world's largest vaccination drive. 2.2 billion vaccines were administered in 2 years, 2020 to 2022. And importantly, as an Indian ambassador, I can never have enough of this. Over 200 million made in India vaccines were supplied to over 100 countries through India's vaccine support program. With the greatest humility, I say that this was perhaps the highest example of altruism at a time when we needed vaccines for our own people. Yet we found the space to reach out to 100 countries at their hour of need. And let me emphasize this point needs to be reiterated. As ambassador of India to the UN, I've had countries come to me and tell me personally that they got their first vaccines, not from this, that, or other country, but from India. And let me also add that most of these vaccines were gifts. We did not commercialize this opportunity. So this ties in very much with the Indian Prime Minister's vision of treating the world as one family, his concept of a human-centric global development model as opposed to a self-centered global development model. Now, as far as foreign policy goes, and before I segue into foreign policy, I will say also that all of us have heard with great sadness of the devastating quakes in Turkey and Syria recently, and India was among the first countries to provide humanitarian assistance to Turkey and Syria. Our teams, even as I speak, are on the ground with equipment, with medical equipment, with medicines, with sophisticated dog squads, and are there providing assistance to these two countries in real time. So the point I'm making is that India takes her international duties very, very seriously. Now, as far as foreign policy goes, I will touch very briefly on our tenure in the United Nations Security Council and our current chairship of the G20. Now, we were in the UN Security Council in 2021-22. In fact, I was privileged to be the president of the council in December 2022. We spoke out in support of peace, security, and prosperity. The basic principles which we adhere to, multilateralism, rule of law, and a fair and equitable international system, were dear to us. We did not hesitate in raising our voice against the common enemies of humanity, such as terrorism. We were acutely conscious of the fact that we were representing the global South, and therefore we strove to be the voice of the South, highlighting issues of particular importance to the developing world. We also tried to bring in focus issues which we believe are highly important, but which had received inadequate attention from the Security Council, such as maritime security. Of course, we also took principled stance on major issues of concern, some of which you might agree with us, some of which you may disagree with, but we were not, and we will not be afraid to take a position which we believe is in the genuine interest of peace and security. As chair of the G20, we shall be ambitious, decisive, inclusive, and action-oriented. Our Prime Minister's own words. One of the critical emphases of the Indian presidency is to voice the needs and perspectives of the Global South. I've already mentioned that. Given the fact that till 2025, the presidency of the G20 will be with an emerging market economy, Brazil in 2024 and South Africa in 2025, we feel that this is an opportunity to reflect the aspirations of the large number of countries who are not members of the G20, but are considerably affected by the decisions emanating from this forum. Development financing, macroeconomic vulnerabilities, and maximizing the full potential of digital public infrastructure for achieving inclusive growth are the fundamental tenets on which India's priorities have been hoisted. So as you can all see, change is underway in India. Last year, the Indian Prime Minister had exhorted his countrymen to commit to 5 pledges. And I'm so happy to tell you that these 5 pledges have reverberated across our country. And what are these 5 pledges? They are his dreams to make India a fully developed first world country by 2047, when we shall celebrate 100 years of independence. And what are the 5 pledges? 1, to make India a fully developed country by 2047. 2, to liberate ourselves from a colonial mindset. 3, to take pride in our roots. 4, to ensure a unity in diversity. And 5, to carry out citizens' duties with honesty and commitment. So, ladies and gentlemen, this brings me to the end of my presentation. I can see that many of you are Indians, or at least Indian origin. What I can say is that you should take immense pride in your roots. India today is a resilient country. It's an ambitious country. It's an aspiring country. And in a lighter vein, someone in the United Nations told me, and I agreed with him, the days of the timid Indian are over. I'm very proud to say that I represent an ancient land. As you know, India is perhaps the world's most ancient civilization, an ancient land and a rising power that, dare I say, none can ignore today. A country that is rapidly reforming, performing, and transmitting. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador, for those insightful remarks. I feel inspired as a woman. I feel proud as an Indian. Thank you very much.